Hello, Sam, darling. How are you?
All right, mate. Alasdair, my munchkin. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm doing really, really well. I'm speaking a little quieter than normal today because I'm dog sitting my parents' lovely little dog, Cleo.
Oh.
A wonderful, soft, gentle little Maltese, but very needy. And I've just got her to settle on the bed with me where I'm sitting. And so I'm just speaking in soft, dulcet tones today.
It's going to be Wholala ASMR.
But yeah, I've been having a nice time. I'm very in the kind of Christmas build-up mode already. Something about
really?
Being in my family's house, yeah, and the early evenings got me in the like coming home for Christmas feeling.
Yeah, no, exactly. I actually went home last week as well. Just for a few days, just like early till like later in the week. And yeah, big Christmas energy was a lot of discussing like when you come home for Christmas and like Christmas present ideas for everyone. I suddenly was like, oh my God, we're really ramping towards. I feel like I've been so blindsided by like the 60th celebrations and stuff that I've sort of forgotten that by the time they're over, we're going to literally be like, what, a week or so away from Christmas?
Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming thick and fast as well. Like, I think especially now, happy end to the SAG-AFTRA strikes. We're now getting loads of sort of news that we weren't able to get before. It's everyone's suddenly like all coming out with their behind the scenes stuff. Shooty, I saw, was posting all of the behind the scenes of the Barbie movie, which was really cute. I'm hoping that they can now with Doctor Who, like, because it was so sad because obviously David and Catherine like worked so hard on the shoot, and then when they had the premiere, they like literally weren't allowed to go. Like they couldn't go.
I mean, also work for them, but yeah, they couldn't celebrate any of that either.
No, exactly. But I'm hoping that, you know, we'll suddenly see their faces plastered everywhere for the next 2 weeks because they're like, quick, we can put you to work. Well, speaking of David Tennant and Catherine Tate, what episode could we be talking about today, Alasdair?
Oh, I wonder. There's no way we publicise this on the socials. There's no way they've seen the episode title. There's no way they heard us say last week what we're doing. So it's going to be a complete shock when I say it's Journey's End.
Oh my goodness, I thought you were going to say the next Doctor starring David Tennant and the Cybermen.
Which we did see in Heaven.
Oh my God, we did.
On Saturday night.
We haven't even spoken about that. Oh my God, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, that was a really weird night out. It was like a last minute choice to go. It was like a really poorly promoted dragathon, and not all of the acts were on board with the Doctor Who theme. It was advertised as being like a Doctor Who dragathon, and to be honest, I really didn't expect. My standard was low going in. Some people really brought their best and did some really good costumes and really good routines. Some people were like, like a sci-fi theme, like an alien theme that I'll do very loosely with some like blacked out contact lenses, right? And it was like,
No, exactly. I'll give a shout out to Sophia Stardust, not that she listens to the podcast, because she was within the No Drag number with Synthrax and Michael Maruli, and that was like a proper Doctor Who number. That I don't know about you, that was my favourite of the night.
Number in there.
And Sophia had this amazing Dalek reveal where it was like a big puffy like Dalek dress that they then revealed to have like a Dalek mutant underneath. And they were incredible. They were so good. But yeah, there was a Star Wars number up, like explicitly Star Wars. And I remember turning to you and just being like, oh, that's not. That's not.
Oh, that's not. I think a lot of people there would have been 4, 5 or 6 years old when it came out, and so have no memory of that being on telly. So they must have been baffled because they had, for context, should have said this first, they had clips. Well, they didn't have clips. They had full episodes from the David Tennant specials playing on all the screens in all the rooms. There weren't even any ads playing like in between that. There was no like normal like tacky Heaven clip art slideshow.
It was really weird. And like, I feel like if they wanted to do that, like just play Doctor Who in the background, like it's weird because obviously they couldn't play the sound because they were playing like the music for the club, but they didn't even like curate the episodes. They clearly just were like, I wonder if maybe, ironically we're talking about this episode, I wonder if maybe at the very beginning of the night, because we got there like an hour or so into the night, whether they played Stolen Earth Journey's End because like, oh my God, that's a great one with everyone's favourite characters, and then they just kind of let it play because by the time we arrived, it was the next Doctor. And like there was such a surreal moment where they're playing like Shakira or Dua Lipa or something, and it was all the Victorian like orphans being sent to work for the Cybermen by like the mind-controlled funeral care people. I was just like, I can't believe this is happening right now.
It was really surreal. We came in and we were like, how Doctor Who themed is this going to be? And there we are. We're there in Victorian times.
We were. When we were debating whether or not we were going to go quite last minute, you were like, part of me doesn't want to go because it's like, you know, we've got Gallifrey Cabaret at home.
It's truly like Gallifrey Cabaret at home. It didn't touch what Gallifrey Cabaret is. Part of what's special about Gallifrey Cabaret, of course, is that you're around Doctor Who fans for the night. And that just took so much of the magic out of it for me, was being the only person on the side of the room who even knew what was on TV. It was just like, it felt like a bit like, oh, this is funny to me, but I'm not really sure anyone else gets why this is funny.
Yeah.
Which sort of dampened it. Like there weren't you know, any like screams for like the big like reveals of like, you know, I've forgotten the name of the artist who did it, but when there was this reveal where like the Dalek kind of unwraps and there's a squid costume inside, there wasn't like as much of like a gag for that as there would have been at a cabaret with a much smaller audience. So it didn't have the magic of that. And Gallifrey Cabaret is a really, really special thing. I was messaging them afterwards as well. I was like, I'm really sorry. And they were like, whatever, looks shit. I was like, it was nothing. It was nothing.
Well, speaking of hype, should I give you a little bit of context for this episode?
Yes, please do.
So Journey's End came out on the 5th of July 2008, directed by Graham Harper and written again by Russell T Davies. Obviously, both worked on the previous episode. Now, the viewership for this episode was 10.57 million, which is huge, as it beat the previous week's record for the highest viewing numbers to date for Doctor Who, which was 8.78 million, meaning that nearly 2 million more people tuned into this episode than The Stolen Earth.
Wow.
I think that's crazy.
What did they think was happening?
Well, David Tennant was regenerating.
Right, but broader than that, for the episode that they saw, these 2 million people, had they all seen it on iPlayer? Like, who were they? What did they think was happening?
I can't remember if they used to do catch-up an hour later. Did they used to do that?
Okay,
I feel like
BBC
they did.
+1.
I feel like something like that. I can't remember if that was
right.
a thing then. That feels right. I don't know. So maybe they caught it on catch-up. And then they were like,
right.
Well, it did. And this episode has a slightly higher IMDb score as well. The Stolen Earth is a 9 out of 10, and this is a 9.2. And it's slightly better.
Disagree. Like spoilers for my review, but disagree with that one.
Yeah, I don't know. We were talking about this before we recorded. I don't think I have any huge low points this episode, but I do think I had more fun with The Stolen Earth. But it's the same with like Avengers. I had more fun with Infinity War than Endgame.
Interesting. This one, I do have more mixed / low points than I did do for the last one.
Well, for anyone who hasn't seen this episode in a while, as I always say, just go rewatch the episode. You can watch on iPlayer for free. Make sure you pay a TV license. But for anyone who hasn't had the chance to watch or would like a little recap, here is a recap of the episode.
The episode opens with the Doctor regenerating, but he manages to siphon the energy into his spare hand, halting the regeneration process and keeping his face. The Torchwood team stays safe from the Daleks behind an impenetrable time lock, and Sarah Jane is saved by Mickey and Jackie returning from the parallel world. The TARDIS is captured by the Daleks and transported to their flagship, the Crucible, and Sarah Jane, Mickey and Jackie surrender to get themselves on board. The Supreme Dalek orders the TARDIS to be destroyed, with Donna locked inside. In the process, Donna touches the severed hand, shrouding her in regeneration energy and causing a new, cloned Doctor to form, who saves the TARDIS from destruction.
Davros explains that the stolen planets are an engine for a reality bomb, which will destroy all matter in every universe. To stop the bomb, Martha threatens to destroy Earth, and the Doctor's other companions threaten to destroy the Crucible. Davros mocks the Doctor for acting the champion of peace while turning those around him into weapons. The Supreme Dalek transports both groups in front of Davros, then the new Doctor and Donna also arrive, trying to use a device to refocus the bomb energy onto the Daleks. Davros blasts them both with electricity.
This flips a switch in Donna's brain and creates a human Time Lord hybrid, the DoctorDonna. Using her newfound knowledge, they disable the Daleks and send all the planets back where they belong. The Supreme Dalek destroys the controls, leaving Earth behind. They use the TARDIS to steer the Earth home, but not before the new Doctor, motivated by Dalek Khan's prophecy of the Daleks' extinction, destroys the Daleks and the Crucible.
The companions flee into the TARDIS and tow the Earth back to its original orbit using the Cardiff Rift as a tow rope. Sarah Jane returns home, Martha and Mickey leave with Jack, and the Doctor returns Rose and Jackie to the parallel universe in which they were previously trapped. He also sends the clone Doctors to the parallel universe to accompany Rose, as the clone Doctor is part human and will grow old with her. Once everyone's back home, Donna's human mind becomes overwhelmed with Time Lord knowledge and starts to kill her. Against her wishes, the Doctor wipes her mind and brings her to Wilfred and Sylvia. The Doctor tells them that although Donna's life has been saved, she can never remember who he is or her time with him, or she'll die. He then departs the noble household alone.
Ooh. A very
sad
heartbreaking end. A very heartbreaking end. But let's not jump to the ending too soon. Let's talk through some of the highs and lows of this entire episode.
Well, you can go first. Do you want to jump in with a high? You want to jump in with a low? Where do you want to go?
Let me start with a general observation. It's wild to me that I think of this as such an ending for the 10th Doctor, but there's another 6 episodes with the 10th Doctor after this, and then there's a 50th anniversary special.
Yeah.
It's also wild to think that after the 10th Doctor's last episode, if you exclude the 50th, there is a full 13 years since David Tennant has played the Doctor on TV. So crazy to me, like 2010 being the end point and then 2023 picking back up again. Obviously it's the 14th Doctor now, but so weird how much time has passed.
I know. I always forget. There's a really funny interview with David Tennant on the One Show, and he's talking to Alex Jones, and he says, because 15 years, you maybe not be able to run quick enough or whatever. And she's like, 15 years? It can't be, David. No, it's not. And he just goes, you're a lot older than you think you are. And she kind of like her head sinks into her hands. But yeah, I mean, he was in the 50th special, but I think of that in a bit of a different world to the 60th specials where he popped in for like a one-off adventure, whereas like he's committing to like 3 specials with an entire arc, like having his own like new run as the Doctor, so to speak.
Yeah, I think of that as, I'm thinking of like the last time he had the keys to the TARDIS, so to speak. The last time he was the Doctor.
For sure. It's funny though, like you said, that I think the same. I always think of the end of series 4 as like, that was the end of David Tennant's time as the Doctor. But like canonically, he had just over a year more of like being the Doctor until the end of Time Part 2, which was New Year's 2010. But we kind of overlook that sometimes, I think, because they're a bit hit and miss.
Yeah, he was plenty busy. I don't think they included that in the like Dr. Donathon either. I think they ended with this story. I don't think they went beyond that, even though that's not the end.
No, there was
a few Donna's time together.
There was a few diehard people on Twitter that then went on to the end of time to like continue the Doctor and Donna's story. But I think all other sensible people went to bed after this episode finished. Into the wee hours of the morn. Talking about taking the mick, we got some further returning characters in this episode with the return of Jackie and Mickey Smith.
Oh my God. That links with my other point here. Another ridiculous credit sequence, absolutely stacked credit sequence once again. And I don't know if I said this last time, I can't remember, but absolutely banger theme tune as well. And I've heard the studio version of the new theme tune that they've done. The mix is a little bit different to the live version we heard. It plays in some of the promo content right at the start, and it definitely sounds better. The percussion is nicer than it is in the live version we heard. But this, for me, still absolutely takes the biscuit for best theme song we've ever had, I think, in Doctor Who. Yeah,
I think we were calling it like the rock and roll theme, the 2008 theme.
Yes,
it's so good.
The rock theme.
Like you said, when you see it with all the names of like the 312 companions that we have in this episode, it's so punchy, it's so cool, it really hits home. It's really, really cool.
And with Jackie and Mickey coming back, what a resolution to the cliffhanger. What a cliffhanger in itself. Like, what a ridiculous tease they left us on. But I kind of love how immediate the resolutions are, and I really love that one of those resolutions is Jackie with a gun, and I also love that giving a few points at once here, I love that Camille is aiming in completely the wrong direction with her prop, and rather than like correct that so that the like laser is kind of firing the right way, they were like, no, let's just follow this, let's just keep it so it's a straight line from where she's aiming, so Jackie's kind of just missing. Is really funny to me. They didn't really correct that. They're like, nah, she's kind of aiming a bit high, and that's fine. Like,
it's fine. No, I read that that was literally my first note for the episode as well. Not the Jackie gun thing, that was well spotted, but that I love how quickly the cliffhangers, because there are 3 cliffhangers, they all get resolved within the first like 30 seconds, but it doesn't ever feel like cheap. Like, the Torchwood team adds stuff in a time lock, Jackie and Mickey come and save Sarah Jane, and the Doctor siphons the energy off so that he doesn't change his face in the regeneration. But that all happens within literally 30 odd seconds of the episode, and they're kind of like, right, cool, straight back into the adventure. Like, you're not left waiting.
Jackie Tyler, Rose's mum, now where the hell is my daughter?
us Smiths got to stick together.
The vanity is absurd, this doctor. I didn't want to change. Why would I? Look at me. Understandable that you don't want to go through like the traumatic process of regeneration if you don't have to. Does somewhat beg the question, could every doctor or indeed every Time Lord, as a bit of insurance at the begining of every
lob off a hand
regeneration cycle, just lob off a hand or even a few hands because they grow right back.
Yeah, because he said it's within the first 12 hours, right?
Yeah, you could do like 11 more hands if you just wanted the same body, finish the healing process, fire off the rest.
Think how many doctors there'd be. Oh my goodness. Do you know what I think is quite funny is that normally in regeneration, there's like, a day of like doddery doctor where their mind's not quite caught up with the fact they've just regenerated and their body's getting used to it all. Yeah. This doctor's just like, right, okay, cool, on we go. Off with it.
I think it was like, because I finished healing, I didn't need to do anything else. So because I could fire the NG off, I didn't go beyond recovery.
I guess doddery doctor tend to like, he's a bit doddery when like he's figuring out what's happening with the whole human Time Lord meta crisis.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so maybe then we get a slightly not themselves doctor in that, which is manifested through a bit of extra violence.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the logic for not lopping off a hand every time, maybe it's because there's always that risk, that potential that it can create a double.
Yeah,
because it can,
they're like worms.
Yeah, because it can spawn more people. I guess is the risk you wouldn't want to do. Like, oh crap, I've got a doppelganger. And maybe this one's evil. Now
maybe. What? Well, one thing I did like about the way that they did this regeneration and siphoning off the energy so that he stayed the same is we finally, I feel, because I kind of feel like we were robbed of it last episode, get the proper Doctor and Rose reunion that we were all clamoring for back in 2008. And I've recently been listening to the Dimension Canon Big Finish audio series, and it's so weird to think that, like, treating that as canonical, that Rose is finally reunited with the Doctor after having just spent, like, the way they kind of talk about it in the story is that, they developed this thing, they got it working, and then she ended up there. But there's, months, if not years, of her just like universe hopping with like a variant of Clive trying to find the Doctor. And that's really funny, I think. But so I'm glad that we finally got that like long-awaited reunion.
I like that as well. I was thinking, would I have liked them to have longer, to have more of a chat and like, how have you been? How's your mum? Are you all right over there? Do you hate me? How's Pete? But the urgency of the situation doesn't allow that kind of conversation anyway. There's so much to get on with. The Daleks are up to things. They don't have the luxury of that kind of conversation anyway. I like that they get a real, proper hug, smiling over the shoulder is really lovely as well. They're just so in love. They're such a natural
so in love.
pair. They're so loved up. It's sick.
I know.
But, I agree. It's a lovely little reunion. I want to talk about the Daleks. Let's talk about the Daleks.
Let's talk about the Daleks.
We have to talk about the Daleks. The Daleks are a rather significant part of this story, to be honest.
They are. It's funny. I don't want to like hog your point. I don't really have tons of lows for this episode. One thing I've sort of realised is that the Daleks aren't... If you took the Daleks out of this and you just said that Davros managed to abduct all of these planets or any other species managed to abduct all these planets, like I guess one of my like negatives this episode is like, what do the Daleks do that another alien with this plan couldn't do?
I guess it's not so much a case of like, what are they able to do as it is about the Dalek motivation to do it. Because it's such a completely insane plan that it only really makes sense if it is the absolute distillation of what the Daleks want, in that their only coding that is so hardwired into them is destroy all other forms of life with Daleks as superior.
That's very true. That's a good point.
Absolutely literal conclusion. You are like, we'll just kill everything. We'll literally kill everything outside of our own Crucible ship. Everything outside of this is gone. Every other universe, the entire multiverse will collapse. The void is gone. The time vortex is gone. Time itself is gone. It's just us in our bubble, which is, of course, an insane plan. And I think I'll talk a bit more about like my thoughts on that plan later. I think we'll get to that because I have a lot to say about that plan.
Fair.
Oh my God, my dog is snoring behind me.
Oh, bless.
She loves it. Wholala sent her right to sleep. Everything I wanted, the soothing tones I was aiming for, I've clearly mastered.
Clearly
She is
achieved
snoring.
them.
Sweet baby. If you hear a little honk, you know what that is. I like how the Daleks just pick up the TARDIS.
Yeah.
I like how they do that, and they just switch it off. They just turn it off, and then they burn it. I like this, a bit of this like show of, not just show of strength, but show of like scientific ability of a fully fledged Dalek Empire. I sort of said this in my last episode, but our last episode? I'm so sorry, Sam. I just claimed the podcast.
You fully just pretended that I was not here.
In my pod, which Sam gets to sometimes feature on and edit. I just like that, the reality bomb is something that only like, a Dalek Empire can make. And I like that, like, they're referred to as like experts in fighting TARDISes. I like all that as well. It's really, really cool, like their abilities. At the same time, we talked a bit about the fear factor last week. Are Daleks scary? For me, they continue to not be scary. And they continue to be very camp. Case in point here, when the TARDIS is picked up and there's 4 of them in a row and their eye stalks all dart up, completely synchronized.
Oh yeah, that was funny. I remember
and they all get locked at the same point because that's the full range of motion of their eyes. Very, very funny to me. Very, very camp. Very endearing.
No, I thought the same thing. I know this in you mean when the TARDIS is being pulled up and they all kind of go and look all their eyes up and get stuck at the same point. There's a funny conversation I was having on Twitter with Liam about, he reached out to Wholala and asked us if we knew why the Daleks are speaking German, and like he was like, oh, maybe it's not, is the translation matrix not working, or is it because the TARDIS is gone? And I did some deep diving, and I think I figured out that it's that they are translating from Dalek language to local Earth English so that the locals understand. But the reason that we as the audience hear German and not English is because we're following Martha, and Martha already learned German separate to the TARDIS translation matrix. So we hear them in German, which I think is just quite a fun little bit. Just hearing exterminieren, halt. Like,
I saw that. And I totally agree with that theory. It's definitely because Martha knows German.
Yeah.
And that really pleases me as an explanation. What I find really funny about that scene is that exterminieren isn't German. That's not how you say exterminate in German.
Is it not?
It's no.
It's just
in there as a joke. It's just nonsense. It's just exterminate. It's not German. I'm pretty sure it's not German.
Oh, that's so funny.
I'm pretty sure.
I'll believe you.
Hold on a second. Let me just... Pretty sure it's not German. Oh, it is a word in German.
Oh, there you go.
But okay, I'm sorry, it is German. Apparently, it's not a word you use very often in Germany. It's not quite how you would translate the word exterminate. It sounds better, but it's not the word you would use.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think exterminate is a word that you'd normally use in English either.
No, I guess not. No, there's a different word that I think you'd use, but I found that funny. I remember hearing from someone like, that's not even a real word. Clearly a lie.
There you go. Just goes to show, I mean, if anything, I don't want to go into it, but from this week's, quote unquote, Who news that's been going around Twitter, it just goes to show that you really can't trust everything you hear from a Doctor Who fan's mouth.
Don't trust anything you hear. Don't spread misinformation, guys. Easily done. Check your facts.
Check your facts.
Easy done.
But no, I get your point in that the Daleks aren't as menacing. I do love Dalek Khan, and it's like like prophecy voice.
Yeah.
And how I quite like the hierarchy of like Davros thinks he's the god of the Daleks, but the Supreme Dalek is actually in charge of the Daleks, and he thinks Davros is kind of like an idiot that they just have to look after.
They have to entertain.
They have to entertain, and Davros is like heeding every single word that Dalek Khan says, but every other Dalek just thinks he's an abomination and is crazy. Like
I love
no one trusts anyone.
I love how much the Supreme Dalek hates Dalek Khan. Really, really entertains me. He's like, the abomination is insane. And Davros, being like, as foretold, he had to be. Yes, this is how things must happen.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. For me, like on the scare factor again, like coming back to the end of the episode when kind of the second Doctor, the Doctor copy.
Let's call him 10-2. Let's call him 10-2.
10-2, sorry. There we are. He has another name, I think, from a comic. He has a name he chooses for himself in a comic that I don't think is canon, but nothing's canon. He's like, he's right. Like already, like this empire's big enough to slaughter the cosmos or butcher the cosmos or something. I was like, these Daleks don't give to me like butchers. They don't feel like butchers. I don't get the violent fear factor from this lot. Maybe it's probably a me problem. Maybe it's because I saw this too long ago and I'm just too familiar.
I think it's probably overexposure because, like, in this episode, like, and I think they do carry it through quite well in the next few episodes. Like, you see when they first come to Earth, they're just shooting everything up, shooting up buildings, killing people before they start rounding humans up. And then I think something that's always stuck with me is when Adelaide says the reason that she decided to travel the world in the waters of Mars and travel, space is because when she was a child, she saw a Dalek and she thought that it was going to kill her. And it didn't. It moved on, and that's kind of like pushed her to like explore space and stuff. And I think we as Doctor Who fans of many years and having watched the Daleks many more times since then.
I've seen too many Daleks.
I think we've seen too many Daleks. I agree with Russell that we probably need a bit of a break from them, even though apparently they're going to probably be in the Children in Need special at the end of the week.
He's so cheeky. He's like, we need a little break from these Daleks. The next day, return to Skaro this Friday.
Did you see? I mean,
you cheeky bastard. I guess my final little scare factor complaint would be set design. So the lighting, it's very mood lighting for me. Like the spot. It's like when you don't want to put the big light on and you turn on some lamps.
Exactly.
And, even like a big kind of glowy red column. I'm like, what can you see through your blue eye stalk? You have no concept of whether this is red or not. Like, why is it so pretty in here? It's far too pretty
for
such an angry little Dalek. So I don't know. That's my small complaint about the set.
Does it surprise you that Daleks have a concept of beauty?
We go Alan Rickman again.
You really do when you do it. You really do.
I think I need grime. I need radiation. I need horrible, scary secret lab. I want something really oh my God, don't touch anything. This is a very toxic environment. Yeah. That's what I want. I guess
for me, I think more of that from Cybermen. I know Daleks are mutants from an experimentation, but I always think of Daleks needing to be more we are housing a gross, disgusting mutant, so everything has to be pristine
with
and
a nice polished facade on it.
Yeah. Whereas the Cybermen are a bit more we are chopping people up and chucking it. I imagine they have rooms with just excess body parts, muck and grime and stuff everywhere. I don't think they need to be as polished. That's how I think of it anyway.
I get that. I'll leave that point alone because I think this is a niche point. I don't think anyone really agrees with me on that. I mean, let me know at Wholala Pod if you do.
I'll take it off of a niche point onto a slightly less niche one for this episode. I think we should spend a bit of time talking about the human Time Lord meta crisis, the DoctorDonna.
We should. Go on. What do you think of it?
Well, I love one thing that I forgot to pick up on the last episode, that Donna, throughout both these episodes, she's just hearing his heartbeat before he's even sort of been born. And it's kind of distracting her, and it's what keeps her in the TARDIS for a second when everyone else is leaving. We get that gorgeous moment. I really, really like having the Doctor, Jack and Rose back together, as a trio. I know we'll probably talk about them in a minute, but just seeing them again, it's really giving me Series 1 vibes. But I love that it's almost there's lots of different ties of destiny. Destiny is something they always talk about with the Doctor and Donna's relationship, and I feel there's not one singular end point to that. I mean, clearly, because we're about to get 3 more episodes of it in a couple of weeks. But I love that Donna was always going to make this Doctor. He was always going to have to chop his hand off, and he was always going to have to siphon off the generation. She was always going to have to be there in that moment to create this Doctor. And then there's that gorgeous conversation with Dento and Donna where they're like, "Oi, watch your space, but oi, watch your Earth go." When he suddenly realizes that he has picked up on some of her personality, and then realizes, oh God, no, I'm half human. I have one heart. What's going on? That's absolutely disgusting.
I like the way that it feels that it's all coming together like that. I like as well the fact that up until now we've been oh my God, what an incredible coincidence. Episode 1, Partners in Crime, they keep just missing each other. They keep just passing each other in the street. And they're just always meters away. But the sense that it's a destiny thing, they're being bound together, and it's not quite the time they're meant to meet yet, is a much more interesting way of thinking about it. And then it's a great kind of way of then looking back at things, that were totally unplanned. I met your grandfather. I met Wilf. He wasn't even playing the character of Wilf at that time. Yeah. But the fact that that's an explanation for oh, that's why Bernard Cribbins was there. It's destiny. It's a fun little neat way of tying it all together.
Yeah, for sure. There's this episode, I mean, there's obvious ways that they're tying things in from other franchises, Torch record about Tosh and her time lock and Sarah Jane's using the lipstick from the show. But then specifically with the Doctor and Donna, I think that they have the benefit of when things don't go to plan, like you were saying with with Bernard Cribbin's character, being able to like tie that into the plot. And I imagine that's probably what they're going to do with these new specials, is like they could have left the Doctor and Donna story well alone, but there'll be ties to, the ties are still happening. And, I don't believe in destiny, but if destiny exists, it's heading for Donna Noble. Like, I'm interested to see what else they sort of pull out of the bag. They're still coming together. Together.
I think the explanation for why she's able to remember and it doesn't kill her will be something that's dealt with in a fairly like quick and silly way. I feel like that's not going to be a major part of it. I think the focus, I'm completely guessing, is going to be more on, the discussion around what my life was like without you, what I felt I was missing when you weren't here, and like, what am I going to do now that those memories are back? I think that's going to be more what it's about. I think the actual like getting the memories back and not dying will be a relatively small part in terms of importance against.
That's fair.
There have been so many good conversations since about, we can get to this. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself with the mind wipe, but there have been so many interesting conversations ever since Donna had her memories wiped at the end of this episode. Since that point in Doc 2, we've dealt with kind of memory a lot.
Yeah.
And we've dealt with like kind of consent a lot as well. Like with Clara, there's a great part which talks about how kind of the future is promised to no one, but I insist upon my past, and how the Doctor is planning to wipe Clara's memories, and she's really shocked by that because she's like, I'm entitled to my memories, like did a day say, but I had a duty of care to you, and she's like, no, you didn't. Like, she'd rather have her memories of everything that happened than survive, so
yeah.
It's that kind of thing. Like there was never a question. And there's another one with Bill where he goes to wipe Bill's
That's
memory.
what I was going to say. There's another one with Bill. Yeah.
Yeah. In her first episode, and she's like, "Oh my god, can you imagine how it would feel if someone did that to you? That'd be shocking." And I'm hoping, I think more than likely they'll touch on that for this. That there's been a whole kind of reconsideration of whether that was the right thing to do, because it saved Donna's life, but Donna didn't want that.
It was still non-consensual. Like even if it was like for her good.
It was the cruelest ending. I don't know where like Russell cooked this up. Like the idea of like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Donna on this beautiful character arc. I'm going to turn her into like the best possible version of herself, and then I'm going to take it away again after she saved the world.
Yeah,
and all that self-esteem she builds and discovers, I'm going to chip it back away. I'm going to get rid of it.
I know, it's so sad. For me, the moment the Doctor starts dropping the companions off at the end of the episode is where I'm like, oh God, something's up. Because he's so somber and like, dropping people off and saying, you need to go out where you belong. And when he's waving at like Sarah Jane and Mickey and that, he's quite sad. But then as soon as he goes back into the TARDIS, it's like, Donna hasn't realized yet. Like she's like, oh, I think we've got a fell spoon, blah, blah, blah. And he is asking her like, how do you know this? Like, how does it feel with my head in your head? And she's like, oh, it's great. And then when she starts looping on the binary bit, like it's so like, oh God, what's going on? But yeah, about it being non-consensual, when she's like, please don't make me go back. I can't go back. Like she's saying this, he's like, what will happen if you have my brain in your head? And she says, I want to stay. Like with Clara, she's saying, I'd rather die than go back to the person that I was. And the fact that he does it anyway, I do think, even if Donna is kind of quite easily forgiving, I feel like Donna's the kind of person that'll probably brush it off, weirdly. I hope that the Doctor has a moment where he says, like, I've lived experiences since being with you and I've been faced with similar situations or something. I know they probably won't want to linger on that too long for, like, the casual viewer, but I hope there is, like, a little moment of, like, I'm sorry I did that.
Yeah, I think there has to be some degree of apology for it, I think. It'll be an interesting conversation. I'm very interested to see how they handle it. Everyone who's been to a preview, I've not seen any spoilers, but everyone who's been to a preview and has answered a comment about, like, what do you think? How was it? Everyone has said that they were very satisfied. Who fans who've been said they were very, very satisfied and said you're in for a real treat. So I've no doubt that it's very satisfying for the Who fans. I'm sure it's wonderful. I mean, he's had 15 years to cook up an ending for this. And I'm sure it's wonderful.
It's about bloody time.
And listen, it's his own rule book. Like he invented the idea of a meta crisis, right? Like I don't know what the rules are. Like no one knows what the rules are. Do what you want. It's all fine. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like I say, less interested in like kind of what the resolution is as to like the conversation around like what happens next. On the DoctorDonna as well. Like I mean, the moment that she becomes the DoctorDonna is just the most unbelievable high as well. Donna kind of gaining all that knowledge all of a sudden. It's just the greatest twist. That moment we see Donna stand up behind the console and she's kind of like just coming to, and you think she's just kind of like, whoa, but she's not helpless. You know, like it's a bit like, it feels like a callback to, it isn't, but the Human Nature Family Blood episodes where it's like, and you really shouldn't let me near those controls, where John Smith is playing stupid and looking like just a stupid human they've underestimated. I just love that. Like, you want to bet time, boy, and everything that follows it. I remember so clearly. I can't remember where I was for the previous episode. Stolen Earth, no idea. But this episode, I know that I was in bed late at night. I'd come back from something. I hadn't seen this one live and I was watching it on iPlayer and I let out a cackle at this point. Like I cackled / screamed in my bed like, oh my God, this is so sad. Like I was really like, ah. I remember like in bed with laptop with this scene and it just blew me away. I couldn't believe like.
I was just blown away.
And it's just wonderful to me. I can't capture that feeling in a bottle again. Like it's now that scene that we've seen so many times, but my first reaction seeing it for the first time, crazy.
I know, crazy. I also love, in like a sort of sadistic way, I guess, seeing a bit of 9 return in 10-2 as well. Just talk about the Doctor, but like he's like, oh my God, you know, there's the prophecy, we've got to destroy the Daleks. You kind of see like the war fury back in him, and I like that he's the consequence of this fight. That like the reason the Doctor and Rose can't be together is because winning came at a price, and the price is having this version of the Doctor that she has to then look after. I think that that's like quite a poetic kind of ending.
A real
for
shame
them.
for poor Rose. I have a point to make on that.
A real shame for poor Rose.
I do have some thoughts on that.
Yeah?
I will first of all say, macro transmission of a K-filter wavelength blocking Dalek weapon in a self-replicating energy Wi-Fi matrix. Can't she say it? Macro transmission of a K-filter wavelength blocking Dalek. That's too hard. It's really hard.
It's a really hard
macro transmission of a K-filter wavelength blocking Dalek weaponry in a self-replicating energy blindfold matrix.
I love when he's like, why don't we think that? It's like, because you two were just Time Lords. You dumbos. I like just that's my favourite bit.
Bioelectric dampening field with a retrograde energy field. Blah, blah, blah. Bioelectric dampening field with a retrograde. It's too hard. Bioelectric dampening field with a retrograde arc. Nope. Bioelectric dampening field with a retrograde arc.
I'm not even going to try.
Bioelectric dampening field with a retrograde field arc conversion. It's too hard. Macro transmission of a K-filter wavelength blocking Dalek weaponry in a self-replicating energy blindfold matrix. It's too hard.
It's very hard. But I'm proud of you for getting through it.
Thank you. And she did it with, like, from memory. Macro transmission of a K-filter wavelength blocking Dalek weaponry in a self-replicating... I can't. I'll stop now. I'm stopping.
Just to touch on the ensemble for the rest of the cast in this episode, it's such a great... Obviously, we were reintroduced to all the companions and stuff in the last episode, but seeing them all like actually come together is so nice. I just have a few little things I want to rattle off. Even though, you know, we're not talking about the actors for these characters, I quite like Mickey and Jack's reunion because they have like a sort of a banter already from series 1, like a back and forth. They're like, I went through all these tunnels chasing life forms and this thing, and who do I find? Mickey Mouse. And Mickey's like, you can talk Captain Cheesecake. And he's like, that's beefcake. I think that's quite like a funny reunion. I like that they're like continuing that banter from that series. There's also a really sweet moment. I don't know if you caught this, and I don't think I've ever noticed it before. I always forget how much I love the pairing of Jack and Martha, that they have like this shared unrequited love of the Doctor, this shared trauma of what happened in that year that never was, and then they've also like continued a relationship outside of the Doctor. Like you've seen them in Torchwood, like they're one of the few companions who like do meet up outside of when they're with the Doctor. When everything's kicking off in the last episode, Martha calls Jack and he's like, oh, voice for Nightingale. In that countdown when Danvers is like, detonate the reality bomb, and they're like a few seconds out, there's a wide shot and you just see Jack and Martha holding hands. It's just the two of them stood kind of alone.
I'd never noticed that until this. I'd never noticed that until this one. I wrote that down. Them holding hands. And also in the park at the end when they leave, they're holding hands again.
I know, and it's never anything like you see it in Torchwood when Gwen kind of asks Martha like, "Oh, did you two ever get together?" And Martha's like, "Oh God, no!" Like absolutely, like she has no interest in that.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. But it's similar to like the Doctor and Donna in that it's just like they really like have like a love for each other in like a platonic way, like a love and respect. And I wonder if they had considered doing something more with that, because there is that line when they're leaving where Jack's like, I don't know about Unit, maybe there's something else you could be doing. And I think the payoff for that is that she ends up becoming freelance, but with MICKEY, which we didn't love. But I really love her and Jack's relationship.
Didn't even bother spelling his name right. I love that.
Did I not?
MACKY. Like, who?
Isn't it The Simpsons? Like, I am so smart. I am so smart. SMRT. I mean SMART. The other point I was going to say about the ensemble is I really, really like when Davros notices Sarah Jane. Because in the Soul Earth we had
too.
There you go. It's almost like you and me on a similar wavelength.
I can't believe it.
In the Soul Earth we have that moment where Sarah Jane hears Davros's voice and she realizes who he is, and she's like, "Oh my God, like he's dead." But then when she comes on the screen and is threatening them, Davros sort of zooms into shot and he's like, "That face, like the time is working together. You were there on Skaro at the very beginning," and like she can kind of stand up for herself, and she's like, "It's Sarah Jane, remember." And I love that moment where because obviously in the Sarah Jane Adventures, she is like the Doctor character, she's the lead. And I like that she gets that moment with Davros to kind of be like, oh yeah, like to really you should remember me. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really love that too. I thought that was a great little payoff. The other ensemble part I really liked was Rose, the Doctor, and Jack going to step out the TARDIS. I'll exclude Donna because she's having a bit of a moment hearing a heartbeat in her head. But is when Rose goes like, "Daleks, ha!" And then Jack goes like, "Oh God."
Exactly.
And they're both kind of like laughing together like, "Oh, they're screwed." And then they have this little motivational moment. The Doctor's like, "Oh, you were great. Oh, you were brilliant. You were brilliant. I was brilliant."
Yeah.
And them kind of filing out together to their probable deaths. I really, really like that. But oh God, I really enjoyed. And also the fact that, as we said before, no one filled in Rose on what happened after they left Jack. So her little like,
bless her.
Oh no, to the dead Jack on the floor.
Oh no.
And as you said, that was initially meant to be
Alonso
midshipman frame or midshipman. Is it midshipman frame? Is
yeah,
it
Alonso midshipman frame.
Is that his name?
Yeah, that's his name. That was they originally wanted him to be the sacrificial lamb in that moment,
and he was actually going to die at that point.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Alonso.
It's like they didn't remember to rewrite Rose's reaction.
Yeah, I did. I always think that's funny. We've actually I've made a whole reel about that for the podcast about how funny I think that line is with Rose. But yeah, it's
at Wholala Pod.
Wholala Pod. Yeah, I like that they use his immortality to their benefit, and like he can't really fill her in, so we just get that weird like, oh no. The one little other thing that I've got to see ensemble is I kind of wish we got a bit more of this, but I'm still satisfied with what we got. We finally get some Rose and Martha interaction. There's the bit where Martha is kind of holding up ransom for the Osterhagen key, and Rose goes, "Oh, she's good." She goes, "Who's that?" She goes, "My name's Rose Tyler." And then I like that. I feel like we truly see that Martha is over the Doctor from how she reacts. She just goes, "Oh my God, he found you," and that's just such a nice little scene. I wish they'd had a little bit more like in-person interaction. But I'm glad that they did have that little moment.
I like to have that moment as well. I found that, again, the contrast, a bit of a shame. Like Rose looks lovely in her like purple jacket, and she just looks like there's a warmth to the way she is in this. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of the nature of like the soldier character she is and the journey she's been on, Martha has to spend this episode with like slicked hair, which doesn't look bad, but and then it's like very formal, and then like this horrible like military black jumpsuit for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was I found a shame about that. I don't know. I just felt like we didn't get to Rose, I guess, canonically never really like saw very much of what Martha was like. It all she ever saw was a very military character, which wasn't really who Martha was at all at her core.
Yeah. She's a doctor. She's there to help people.
Yeah, she didn't meet Dr. Jones, which is kind of a shame. We only kind of met almost like
Sergeant.
Like the worst version of Martha.
It's like the one. Well, that's actually a really good segue onto the next section that I was thinking we could talk about for a moment, which is the sort of consequences of the Doctor and how he treats his companions and what they become when they're with him. And I think that's a really good point because Rose kind of had her time with the Doctor snatched away. So I don't think she ever had to like. They talked about it in her series with Jackie, where she was like, you're becoming like him and, give it 40 odd years when you're a market in some alien planet, who are you going to be? And I think that what they have explored with all companions, even past this episode, is that being with the Doctor for too long isn't a good thing and it changes you not necessarily in the best way. And I think the Doctor kind of gets away with that because he can kind of just up and run and carry on his adventures. And in this moment where he sees all of the people that he loves and adores thinking they're doing the right thing, but all of them are like threatening violence or genocide or, military action, basically. And I agree with you with Martha. I think that by this point, she's almost become... This is why I think Martha's story is so unfinished. She has almost become the worst version of herself in that she's literally willing to destroy the Earth and kill humanity.
Yeah, my question here actually for you was, do you think Martha would have done it, or do you think it was all a negotiating tactic? Because I guess she kind of holds UNIT up at this point. I mean, I guess without her, there would have only been 2 people online who could have done it.
Yeah.
They needed 3, and there was never a 4th online. But she delays UNIT in that the protocol was meant to be that she goes ahead and destroys the planet with them. But I wonder, do you think Martha would have done it or only negotiated? I am inclined to say Martha, at this point in this story, the way she's written, would have destroyed the planet if she felt it was needed.
I think she probably would have, because there's that bit where the Doctor's like, that's never an option. He's trying to plead and almost talk down to her. And she snaps and she's like, don't argue with me, Doctor, because basically I've thought this through. And I think the Daleks need this to do something really bad. So if we remove one of the planets, they won't be able to do that. And that'll be the greater good. So she's not even thinking about what's good for herself or her species. She's thinking about what's good for the universe. And I think she's at the point in her military life, I guess, where I think she would have done it. I think that the reason that she was like, there's one more thing the Doctor would do. I think she has learned from her adventures and stuff, and that's why
she has to give them a choice.
You have to give them a choice. You always have to give them a choice. But if they choose not to listen to you, because there's that moment she stands up with it and she's like, it's the crucible of the Earth, and I think she's hoping it'll be the crucible, but I think she would have been willing to make it the Earth.
It's interesting. There's a point I forgot to add in. That accent. That is London, yeah? I went to London a long time ago.
I think London must have changed now, yes. But still,
I imagine London must have changed. The glamour. Somehow the most chilling line in this episode. The glamour.
I know what it does. And then the bit she's like, there were soldiers. Boys.
Boys. She, for me, has a greater fear factor in this episode than the Daleks.
Oh my God,
fear factor, I'm only now realizing, is language I've stolen from Battles and Time cards. But nonetheless, she gets a high 9,000 in my books.
I don't know. I wonder if she has her own Battles and Time card. I actually don't know if she does.
She will. She must.
She must. Anyone listening, can you please let us know if
identify
the German
that card.
Identify that card and let us know, please. Write in. Just coming off of the back of that, what did you think of the death montage in this episode?
The death montage, a good reflection on the consequences. I do like that. I think it was an appropriate reflection on the Doctor's, quote unquote darker side.
Yeah.
It was long enough. I almost don't like dwelling on the Doctor's darker side too long, because it becomes really obvious really quickly, as it did in Turn Left, that if you try and do relative death tolls of what if the Doctor wasn't there, that things are always far worse when the Doctor isn't involved.
Yeah,
so the Doctor is a bit of a hero and often, if not always, does the best they can with mistakes that are hard to avoid. So I like that there's that reflection.
I think we've spoken about this before with other Doctors as well. I get a bit bogged down when the Doctor gets too existential about am I a good man and what have I done and because you said, especially with Turn Left, it's point blank case proven that the universe is a better place for the Doctor being in it, and we'd kind of all be screwed if he wasn't. But I do think it's important for the Doctor to see that that there's weight to what he does, and he kind of can just like get up and run away, and the people that he leaves behind, alive or dead, there are always consequences for them. I think that he kind of gets like a double whammy with like being reminded of the dead and being faced with the living who are threatening violence and stuff. And I think that is like a good wake-up call for him.
Yeah, it's an important point. Okay, the reality bomb bothered me. The reality bomb, okay, some things. One, the test. The test is funny. They stand like Sims. When they are evaporating,
oh my God.
they stand like Sims. It's really funny. And I get that they did that because CGI, these shots used to be complex and expensive, and they couldn't have any of this, movement they weren't expecting. So everyone had to stand very still. And a link to that, Jackie's exit from this as well. It's like, Jackie, like the timer, it's recharged. Her exit is a little bit funny. She teleports, she's like, I'm sorry. And then she vanishes, traumatizes that woman who's about to go to her death. And then when she arrives on the other side of the door, also not sure how she controlled where she arrived. That used to like ping people between universes. Nonetheless, she's immediately just like smiling. She's like, hooray. Like she's so immediately not guilty about it. She's so like, and she's not just like relieved, she's delighted.
I thought Sarah Jane's face is so like, Sarah Jane looks at her like judgingly. Sarah Jane's like, what the fuck? Like,
the reality bomb. Okay, my issue with the reality bomb, it's a really interesting one because it's the ultimate endpoint of like the Daleks' programming and their DNA. They are conditioned to survive and survive above all else and destroy all other forms of life. They're creatures of hate. The natural extreme end of that is that you destroy everything else living in the universe until only you survive. The natural question is like, what does a Dalek do in a universe where they succeed? Because there is nothing for them to rule and conquer, and presumably, as they have done in other episodes, they'd only resort to civil war and arguments over kind of like what makes a pure Dalek end up killing each other anyway. A really funny end conclusion of that would be that in the end you only have one Dalek left who makes itself kind of the supreme life form singular in the universe, which would be very interesting. Another complex point is why, if this is happening in multiple universes all at once, all these parallel worlds, there's parallel Daleks, parallel Davroses, all trying the reality bomb all at the same time, why is there no world in which that succeeds? And someone made a really interesting argument about this. Okay. So follow me here. This will be interesting to some people.
All right. I'm with you on the journey.
Okay. Not to everyone, but interesting to some people, right? But if you start thinking about the multiverse too hard, it gets a bit weird. But in Doctor Who, we have a multiverse. We have all these parallel realities, all slightly different, presumably an infinite number of them. So Davros is required to make the plan a success. Davros requires Dalek Khan to rescue him from the first year of the Time War, but rescuing Davros always drives Dalek Khan insane, which causes Dalek Khan in every universe to thwart the plot and allow the Doctor to win, or in some way in a universe without a Doctor, basically trip over Davros's plan. So as a consequence, in every universe where Davros is able to build a reality bomb, there is always a Dalek Khan who's witnessed the entire patchwork structure of time and space and thwarts Davros.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. So Dalek Khan is a prerequisite for the scheme to exist in the first place. So it's impossible for Davros to win, which is really interesting. So that's one angle on it. This might not be interesting to everyone, but to me it's interesting.
No, I think that is interesting, yeah.
So Dalek Khan always saves the day, which is great. I love Dalek Khan, I really do. I love him saying Dalek Khan. So much fun. Another take on it is that you could say, actually, there are several universes where they did succeed, but throughout the multiverse, there are also an infinite number of Doctors who not only prevented the reality bomb from going off, but they actually found a way to reverse the effects of the reality bomb in some areas, or indeed that because there are so many universes between us and wherever the reality bomb detonates, that it will eventually reach every universe and every universe will be destroyed, but it's just so far away getting through any infinite number of billions and trillions of other galaxies first that it hasn't got to us yet. So there's many angles.
See, one thing that I mean, obviously everything in Doctor Who is canon and nothing is, but one thing that I don't think the BBC are even maybe I'm underselling how aware the BBC are of their like franchising. So one thing that I think that the BBC don't even maybe realise they're doing that much is saying that there's only one Doctor in the whole of the multiverse. So an example of this is obviously much later than this in The Timeless Child. It's alluded that the Doctor was taken out of one universe and put into R1. And they had the option of going back to the universe. But even within the context of this kind of story, in the Dimension Canon Big Finish audio dramas, which is all about Rose trying to get to our universe, it's about trying to find a universe with the Doctor as well. So her end goal is to find the universe she came from and be reunited with her Doctor. But in every single universe they go to, they're trying to find a Doctor. And they realise that, spoiler alert if you've not listened to the Big Finish audio, none of the other universes have a Doctor. But in doing that, like Earth isn't facing the threats that the Doctor would bring with it, because quite often the threats that come to Earth are because of the Doctor's involvement. And she's sort of chasing down universes with the Doctor. So I think that maybe it's a case of like, not to deep dive in it too much, there's certain, the Daleks never get as big as they do because in other universes there aren't other Doctors. So, they've said it before that like your enemy keeps getting big. I think it was Clara or Oswin that said they keep getting bigger because they're more scared of you. I think that in other universes there isn't a Doctor, so the Daleks don't have to get as big as they do.
As well, if you go back to like Genesis of the Daleks and that famous Tom Baker speech, like, do I have the right? Presumably in every other universe, if you didn't have the Doctor and the Time Lords did exist and they dispatched a different Time Lord to go and deal with it, that Time Lord just touched the wires.
Yeah,
there are
exactly.
no Daleks.
Just wiped him out.
They were just like, oh yeah, cool. I can deal with that. That's fine. And they were like, do I have the right? And they were like, yeah,
go for it, babe.
No time law. Everything's fine. No reality bomb. Many saved.
Yeah.
The end. I guess the other really important thing we need to talk about is Rose's ending. Now, at the time,
Yes.
I was sure it was perfect. Now I'm not sure. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the same as you. I think at the time, I knew that she wasn't going to stay on long term. And I kind of was like, oh, how nice. Because like she gets to have her own version of the Doctor and he still is the Doctor and they get to live happily ever after. And who knows, maybe we'll get a spin-off with the two of them and whatever. It's interesting hearing Billie Piper's thoughts because she was interviewed not that long ago. I know that you know this too. It seems a bit like the Doctor, as in like our Doctor, was just telling Rose, you now have to be lumped with this responsibility. Here's someone who's not me, that you actually don't really know, but you sort of know. I need you to take on the responsibility of making it better. You also have to stay in this parallel world that you were traumatically trapped in. Goodbye. Like, I don't think that's the nice ending that they maybe were like hoping it was.
So the RTD explanation is, and I agree with this, in the end, I sort of thought we created a companion who was so alive and dynamic and so wedded to the Doctor, the only way to get rid of her is to send her into a parallel world from which she can never return. Otherwise, she'd stay with the Doctor forever. So, I think narratively, like, unless you're willing to do a River kind of thing with like, her spending 24 years unseen off screen by the singing towers where she lives out the end of her days with 12, you'd almost have had to do that with Rose to like expedite the rest of her adventures for it to make kind of on-screen sense that Billie Piper's just not in it forever. Or eventually just shot by a rogue Dalek and that's the end.
That's what I was going to say. Otherwise, they just kill her off.
Exactly. Do a Clara, one adventure gone wrong. But I think that was also kind of a little anti-RTD to kind of permanently kill a companion off. I think isn't really his style. I think she would have ultimately become a Clara, where she just just became increasingly reckless and felt that she was invulnerable.
I agree.
I think that was the other kind of like believable route for her. I don't know what else you could have done. I don't know if I understand the idea that like the Metacrisis 10-2 Doctor is as like angry and bloodlusty as he's kind of made out to be. It's like, oh, that's me when you met me. That guy's insane. If we leave him on his own, he'll kill people.
He's born in battle.
He didn't kind of do it out of revenge or like doing it for bants. He did it because otherwise the Dalek Empire was big enough to...
Well, genuinely, what would have happened if he hadn't?
So I don't really see what the alternative was. I don't know.
I'm happy. This could be a whole other episode. I could talk about this for hours, but in summary of my thoughts, I think that there's, bad points for it, and I think there's good points for it, but overall, I think that Rose will have a better life with a human version of the Doctor she can grow up with and who has all of the memories and they've all been on the same adventures together and live somewhat of a normal life. And who knows, maybe I do wonder that like they could never bring David Tennant back again, I think, after these specials. But part of me wonders what would have happened if instead of doing these 3 specials, they had 3 episodes where, you know that deleted scene where the Doctor gives 10-2 and Rose a piece of the TARDIS to grow? I wonder if if there have been 3 specials where we're set on the parallel world and we get that as like, they put that back into canon and we realise they did grow their own TARDIS and it's that version of the Doctor and Rose exploring the universe and you just get 3 episodes of them doing that. That would have been really cool to see.
Just grew a TARDIS in the shed.
I like to think that there's, in my headcanon, there is a version of the Doctor and Rose travelling the universe together, growing old together, maybe having a family and ending up happily ever after. And I think that is a better ending for Rose than if she had stayed with her Doctor and, like you said, withered and grown old and died or, been killed in battle.
A mixed point for me, the Doctor's scene, the Metacrisis Doctor running with a gun, didn't please me. An insanely kind of short-sighted plan. Don't know why he didn't fire from a distance. Don't know why he didn't tell Donna how to use the gun. I guess he was furious and violent and stupid and a little bit like Regeneration Brain, but didn't get that. Everyone together in the TARDIS, flying the TARDIS together. Great moment. No, Jackie. No, not you. And also, that's really good, Jack. I think you're the best. The K9 cameo, even late in the episode.
The K9 cameo was so cute.
The process is simple. And how much Sarah Jane loves and is proud of Luke. Gotta go, he's only 14. It's a long story. And just her delight when, they call Luke and Sarah Jane and just her delight when they call Mrs. Smith and Luke and she hears they're okay and she's just like thrilled. That's the one thing she wanted from all this. She's so happy he's all right. But those are the last points for me I wanted to get through. There's probably loads we didn't cover today because it is such a packed ebb.
You could have done a 2-parter on this. One, even just from talking about your points there, I love the bit where the Doctor and Rose ask Gwen if she has an old Cardiff family. She's like, back to the 1800s. They're kind of like, good space for interference because of Gwyneth being played by Eve Miles as well. But Alasdair, we do not have time to talk about it for days because we're moving on to a very quick game of our favourite game. Camp or Dump. That was your quiet, sat by a sleeping dog. Spaceman and Earth Girl. I think that's pretty camp.
That's pretty camp. It's camp.
I've got all of Sarah Jane's space jewellery. She's got a sonic lipstick. She's got the warp star necklace. She's all the space jewellery.
It's super camp, the sonic lipstick especially. But I saw it on auction as well. You can buy the prop. We saw it last week.
Oh yeah, for the warp star.
Before. Yeah, the warp star prop, the authentic prop was selling for, I think it was somewhere between like $1,000 and $3,000.
Crazy.
Very tempting gift for you, Sam, if I had that kind of money.
If I could have bought it for myself, I would have. But sadly
you'd wear that with pride next to Galley Cab. How about, do you want a bet time, boy?
That's camp.
And that's really good, Jack. I think you're the best.
I don't know if I'd say it's camp. It's kind of, that's just like girl boss diva hunty slay.
I just like her flirtiness with Jack. It's so shameless.
Yeah.
And then I really liked the... I was pregnant, do you remember? Had a baby boy. Oh, brilliant. What do you call him? Doctor. Really? No, you plum. He's called Tony.
That's camp. I just love the Doctor's blind delusion that she thinks she's going to call him her son the Doctor.
No, you plum.
No, you plum. He's called Tony. Oh, camp. Well, I have a couple of fun facts for this episode that I want to rattle through for you.
Oh, go on.
So originally, in the original script, there was going to be some dialogue between the Doctor and Rose on the Crucible, where Rose turns to the Doctor and says, so how is that sentence going to end? The Doctor goes, which one? And when Rose said, the one that started with Rose Tyler. And the Doctor was going to say, oh, it's cold out. And she went, seriously? And then the Doctor was going to say, does it need saying? Before Davros interrupts by saying, such intimacy with your companions, Doctor, so different from the man I once knew. So that scene that they end up having on Bad Wolf Bay, they were going to have it in front of Davros. And he interrupts talking about their intimacy, which I thought was interesting.
I like the kind of acknowledgement that it's a very different thing as well.
Yeah. The VFX shot of K9 teleporting into the attic to help Mr. Smith, it was actually reused from The Lost Boy Part 2 from Series 1 of the Sarah Jane Adventures. So they didn't actually get that shot back of K9. They chopped it out of a Sarah Jane Adventures episode.
They are so cheap.
They are. They must have had the prop back though, because there's that scene where Luke is holding on to K9 as they're like zipping through space. But that actual like visual effect shot was cut out. So apparently the scene where the Daleks are speaking German is meant to be a tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that Terry Nation, the original creator of the Daleks, based the Daleks on the Nazis when he wrote them into the original script for the Daleks, 1960s.
I like that. I do like that. And I think the word that she uses to describe them as well, she calls them der Albtraum. Der Albtraum.
Oh, yeah.
And that means the nightmare. One der Albtraum dropped from the sky.
Apparently, Russell T Davies had long intended that the Doctor's hand would eventually be used to grow a half-human version of the Doctor, and he anticipated this would actually take place in David Tennant's final adventure. However, when writing the script for this episode, he decided he'd get more mileage from the idea if he used it for this story. So it was always intended that was why he had the hand chopped off. It was always going to be found. It was always going to grow a half-Doctor.
Chekhov's hand.
Chekhov's hand?
Chekhov's hand. Beautiful. There's some lovely facts, babe. I'm surprised. I'm still being shocked even now, all these years later.
I'm always going to be able to shock you. This was a fun fact-filled episode.
It was a great episode. I mean, a chocker episode.
To see at the end, we've still got some Series 4 episodes to go back to, but I think we might have to. Well, I was going to say we'll have to put a pin in Series 4. We're going to have to, because guess what's happening next week, Alasdair?
What is happening next week, Sam?
Well, the air date for the next episode of Wholala, which will be episode 55 for anyone paying attention, it's on a special date. It's the 23rd of November, 2023, which means it is the day Bargain Hunt's on.
Oh my God, are we talking about Bargain Hunt? I've not looked at the schedule.
Literally, so the next episode of Wholala is going to be aired on the 23rd of November, so we can talk about Bargain Hunt, we can talk about Children in Need.
Special.
And we're going to be doing an anniversary special for the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, leading into the 60th anniversary specials.
Oh my
Finally.
God.
It's come around.
I can't believe it.
I really can't.
I actually can't believe it.
No.
I cannot believe it. And we're also going to, we'll talk about the Children Need scene, which I guess is our first, we've had our first scene with the 14th Doctor, but the first one where he says more than 3 words, a full 5 minutes
exactly
of television will be very interesting with a Murray Gold score as well, which is extremely exciting. And I guess we won't have seen the Bargain Hunt episode, but we'll be releasing it at the same time it's airing.
We will.
So very exciting.
Very exciting stuff. Well, we would love to hear from you before the episode. What are you looking forward to as part of the 60th anniversary celebrations? Is it the Daleks colorization? Is it just the 3 specials? Are you looking forward to the Christmas special, or are you just looking forward to seeing our good friend Alasdair on Bargain Hunt?
No one wants to even see the Star Beast. It's just Bargain Hunt.
It is. We had someone write into us this week asking if we could give them a spoiler as to whether or not Wholala get a mention on Bargain Hunt, and I'm going to leave that to you. We can. Well, you know what? You'll find out next week.
You'll find out if that was allowed.
Well, as always, please reach out to us on any of our socials. We've got Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, all of which are at Wholala Pod. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, get in touch with us. And if you've got time, we would love to hear reviews as well. If you would mind leaving us a review on Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts, if you can give us a rating on there and follow us as well so you get notifications when we drop new episodes.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Wholala, and we will see you next week.
We'll see you next time, my darlings.
Bye.